Hello and welcome to the Complete Hire Equipment Week 1 Finals Preview. Andrew Wilson here with Pepe Cavalieri. It's a great time of year when finals come around, isn't it, Pep?
Sure is. Been waiting for it all year pretty much, and it's here finally. Yeah. Got some good weather too last weekend, so hopefully it continues and should get some good games.
Yeah. All right, let's start with Rams Division 1. Deer Park taking on Hoppers Crossing. First time in 5 years. Deer Park haven't finished on top, and we know they've won the last 5 flags. This will be our match of the day on 88.9 Win FM. Who wins between the Lions and the Warriors?
I think Deer Park have to start heavy favourites based on form, probably more than anything. Hoppers Crossing last week weren't entirely convincing, very wayward in front of goal. If they kicked a little straight against Altona, they could have been a chance, but I just wonder whether they have the cattle to bring it up to them. Let's just go through a few names here. Stranick last week, concussed. Yep. Would be a big question mark to play this week. Corey Muscat the week prior also had a head knock. He might be right to come back. We'll just have to wait and see in the lead up as well. And obviously Ryan Kitchen looked to have done a hammy against Altona as well. And he was one of the main players who kept them in it against the Vikings. Yeah. And obviously we know Jordan Mead is unlikely to play again this season from what we hear. So some big names out of the Hoppers Crossing lineup, but then you flick the page across to the Lions and the likely inclusions this week are Shannon Burns, Clicks, Kennedy, Williams, Aramantides, to name a few. It doesn't really matter who they bring in though, Willow. They gel so well together, and no matter who they've got in their lineup, they're going to be incredibly difficult to beat. We know they put Hoppers to the sword in one quarter earlier this season. It could happen again, so it's going to be really important for the Warriors to make a strong start and just show their intent early, but I just can't go past the Lions.
I agree with you there. I think the Lions will win that one. Spots will take on Werribee District again for the second time in a row, but this time loser leaves town. No more finals for them, and they will play the loser of Deer Park and Hoppers Crossing.
Yeah, so a really good game. Obviously a 4-point win last week to Spotswood. They didn't really gain anything from it apart from some confidence, certainly, having to play them again. They've beaten them by 46 points earlier in the year at Werribee and now at home by 4. So they led comfortably at half-time and then had a real slump in the third quarter as the Tigers stormed back into contention. But then they snatched it at the end, Spotswood. So through much of the season, Werribee's been the better team, but when they've played each other, the Woodsmen have had their measure. So I'm slightly leaning their way. They rested a few guys at the weekend. Tommy Langlands didn't play. There's absolutely certain that he'll come back into the lineup for sure. Some good ins likely as well for the Tigers, though, in VFL credentialed players in Nick Bucks and Andrew Panai. So you'd love to have those two in your team. It's a real toss of the coin, Willow. I think both teams would be incredibly disappointed to exit in the first week, but unfortunately one of them will, and it might be the Tigers. I just think the Spotswood at the moment, they've got their measure.
I'm going for the Tigers to win this one. They would have been pretty disappointed last week. Cost themselves the double chance, but not getting the win over Spotswood last week. But I think they will be too good this week and they will advance. That was Rams Division 1. Now Division 2, Yarraville Seddon take on Point Cook. They played each other last week as well, just like Spotswood and Werribee Districts.
Well, again, another team that's, Yarraville Seddon have had everyone's measure, not just Point Cooks, and another easy win last week. It was a dead rubber of sorts. Point Cook would have wanted to get the 4 points for a bit of confidence, just a mental edge, potentially. Yarraville Seddon, I suppose, too strong regardless of what the thought processes were for both teams. So it's a really interesting one. Again, strong favourites, the Eagles, Willow. They've been the standout team in Division 2 all year, but there's question marks over them in big games over the past few years. Yeah. Certainly not this year, but in grand finals the past 2 seasons. I mean, they probably weren't favourites against Caroline Springs 2 years ago. It was probably even money last year, but they were never really a chance against North Footscray. So if they can get over this hurdle, it might be really big for them, and I think they should.
Yeah, I think the Eagles would advance to the Division 2 grand final. North Footscray take on Parkside. Parkside with a good win last week over Manor Lakes to secure their spot in this elimination final.
Yeah, they were very good last week, Parkside. They much better than the week prior where they lost to North Sunshine, North Footscray rather, sorry. And so it could be an interesting game. North Footscray have started to play a little bit better the past few weeks. They welcomed back the Montebruno brothers, Jason Buddy, Kieran Murphy. there's no chance any of those players won't be there this weekend as well. So if they can all fire, they're going to be incredibly difficult to beat. But on face value, they probably haven't fired more times than they have. So it really comes down to those sorts of players. If they can deliver, they're going to be really hard to beat. O'Shea was missing last week for the Magpies. So against Manor Lakes, a good swing man can play back, can play forward and kick goals was the difference about a month ago against Newport when they found themselves behind at halftime. So he can change a game. O'Shea, so it's a really... I just have a feeling, Willow, I've had a feeling for a while that this could be the elimination final matchup, and I like Parkside. They're on a bit of a roll.
I'm going to go with North Footscray to win that one. Those are Division 2 games that can be played at Burbank Oval Saturday and Sunday. Division 3, Point Cook Centrals take on Tarneit on Saturday at Pennell Reserve.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. The last time we saw these two teams was in horrific conditions at Featherbrook Reserve, and the Sharks had the Titans measure. Raslog and Henderson likely inclusions for the Sharks, and Smith as well for the Titans is probably a good chance to come back in. The Titans certainly not with their strongest team due to a few injuries that they probably won't see come back in. Certainly the notable one there is James Dan Janowski, who has hurt himself and won't play any further part
broken
of the
hand
season. So it just leaned the way of the Sharks, I think, based on that. But it's a real toss of the coin.
I'm going the Titans. I think they have been their best side pretty much.
We're flipping.
We have.
We're a bit different today.
Yeah, the Titans for me, best team pretty much since midway through the season in Division 3. Final game is Wyndham Suns taking on Braybrook in the elimination final on Sunday. This game will be played at Dempster Park, North Sunshine's home ground. Braybrook started the rot for the Suns by defeating them early in the year. Suns haven't found much form since then, but had a good win last week. Should be an interesting game.
Yeah, certainly. Massive win last weekend for Wyndham Suns, only against North Sunshine. So I'm not sure what you can garner from that in terms of how much their form has spiked since their, I suppose, four losses in 5 games, which was started by Braybrook, as you mentioned. And they've been challenged by Braybrook throughout the year. They were down at three-quarter time in their first match, came from behind 7-1, I think, in the last quarter to win by 5 or 6. So they had to work for it, and then were just out-bustled in the second match. So by a very undermanned Braybrook. So the Brookers will have a fair bit of belief going into this game, Willow, that I think they can win. Some big ins likely, Nerilic, Kirk, Taylor, Lear for the Suns. You don't argue with that. I think the quality across the park suggests that they should win if they play anywhere near their best, but I think the main concern is that they won't because they haven't for a while. So I'm on the Suns, but not with heaps of confidence.
I'm with the Suns as well. Unfortunately, they'll end Braybrook's season, who have had a terrific year. All right, this has been the Complete Hire Equipment Week 1 Finals preview. If your team's playing, good luck to them this weekend.